Hi, I'm Annie Fitzsimmons. I'm your Washington Realtors Legal Hotline lawyer. This is another episode in our DBrief series entitled Thriving Through an Audit. And I am once again joined by Bill Dutra and Cathy McDonald, Department of Licensing. You want to tell them one more time who you are?
I'm Bill Dutra. I work with the Department of Licensing in our Business and Professions Division. One of the great things I get to do with my job today is work with all of our different licenses and professions, and get to work with a lot of our licensing partners like Washington Realtors, supporting our licensees and the residents of Washington.
And I'm Cathy McDonald. I am the audit supervisor for the real estate program.
And in this DBrief episode, we are talking to you as designated broker specifically with respect to your required office policies. Now, let me just lay the foundation at the outset. We're focusing in this episode on your required office policies. You should have a robust office policy, firm policies that help you establish for your brokers exactly what your expectations are of them with respect to every aspect of not only provision of real estate brokerage services, but just operations within your firm. How do you expect them to treat your computer systems, your IT systems? How do you expect them to treat one another, employment issues, human resource issues? Everything should have a policy. And if you don't have a robust policy manual, then you should work with your firm's legal counsel, because not only is that a very clear communication tool for you with your brokers to help set expectations for them, it can be your number one tool in defending against liability if you have a broker who goes rogue. So I'm not going to extol all the virtues of a policy manual in this episode, except to say if you don't have a policy manual that has been created by your firm's legal counsel and or reviewed by your firm's legal counsel in the recent past, you should do that. You should make that a number one priority for yourself. But in this episode, we are talking about firm policies that are required for designated brokers to have and maintain within their firm's office policies, required by Washington law. What are those policies?
So there's only three. And a lot of times we get the entire policy manual when we ask to see these three, but we only need to see the three. And the first one is a written policy regarding the referral of home inspectors. A lot of times people will think they can just take the law and say, okay, here's the paragraph and here's my policy. Doesn't really get you there. The policy on the referral of home inspectors is that you have a written policy that addresses your process of referring, your policies regarding and processes regarding it. And if you have any kind of a financial business relationship or family relationship with the home inspector that you are referring. So those are the key elements of it. It doesn't have to be lengthy. It just has to be a policy that your firm follows and that all of your licensees are following the same policy on the referral of home inspectors.
Before we leave that policy, can we just add, because this is a question I get a lot on the hotline, is it a business relationship that must be disclosed if a broker has done nothing other than refer that inspector to other clients in the past?
That's a really good question that we have a really hard time answering. I'm going to be honest with you, because what is a business relationship? How do you determine what that is? Is it, I've used this home inspector 5 times, I've used this home inspector 1 time? That's a decision that we kind of push back onto the designated broker, and you need to determine if somebody came back and said you didn't disclose this relationship, could you defend that? Could you defend the fact that there is not really a business relationship? I just happened to use him one other time or whatever. I mean, it's got to be something that foundationally you can defend.
Okay. And so the one distinction that I just heard you say is, have I used him, meaning have I hired the inspector versus have I referred him to a client? Is that the distinction you're making or not?
It could be either of those things. It could be either of those things because unfortunately, the way that the law is written, it doesn't come right out and it doesn't define what a business relationship is. And so then it kind of leaves that to the designated broker to determine, do I have a business relationship with this? Well, if you have ownership in it, obviously you do. If it's your cousin or your brother or somebody that you know, then that becomes the family disclosure part of it that you need. But if you have financial interest in it, then that's a no-brainer. Or then there could be an argument made for, this is the only home inspector I ever refer. that might be a business relationship.
Okay, so then we're going to pick up on the overriding theme that we talked about in the last episode. The overriding theme for this whole conversation in this video series is DOL looks backwards at what happened and can diagnose what went wrong. Your job, designated brokers, is to sit at the front end of decisions and make sure that you set practices on the path to compliance, right? And so what I think I just heard you say is that rather than trying to split hairs about what is or is not a business relationship in a designated broker's office policy regarding this issue, it might not be a bad idea to be overly broad and say, make the disclosure. Broker, if your only business relationship is that you have referred this inspector to other consumers in the past, then make that disclosure. That's what I hear you saying, is you're not probably going to get in trouble for disclosing that, but you could get into trouble if you fail to disclose that. And it turns out that a trier of fact decides that was a business relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, we're talking about transparency for your client. That's what we're looking for. You want to give your clients, and this is what is so relevant and important for real estate brokers. They are so good at the customer service aspect of it. So give them that little bit more transparency and let your client make that decision of who they are.
Okay. I will say that is a broader answer than I have given on the hotline in the past. So it's great. I mean, designated brokers and I are all learning from this experience. So thank you for being here. All right. That was one office policy. Any others?
Yep. The second one is just regarding levels of supervision of all brokers. The requirement is very short and sweet. It doesn't give a lot of clarification or what's required of the policy. So the expectation is that the designated broker will have a policy in place, or the firm in place, that covers the supervision of all brokers of the firm.
So in this case, the policy, I know you just said this. I just want to make it clear in my own mind. This specific policy does not drill down on what a designated broker does to supervise. Simply clarifies that a designated broker will be supervising every broker licensed to the firm, regardless of what that broker's role is within the firm. Is that what I just heard you say?
So it's really kind of towards managing brokers and brokers, because brokers, that term is used interchangeably. But it's really just saying that the firm must have a written policy regarding the supervision of all brokers of the firm. It doesn't dictate what is in the policy, but they must have a policy.
Okay, regarding supervision.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the third policy is?
The third policy is a written policy regarding the supervision that is a heightened level of supervision for licensees with less than 2 years experience. It doesn't talk again about how they achieve that. The only part of it that is really dictated by license law is the fact that their contracts have to be reviewed within 5 business days of mutual acceptance. And so there's that expectation. There's the expectation that is then documented by the designated broker or delegated managing broker somewhere in that file to show that review has taken place in that 5-day window.
Okay, within the files. It doesn't have to be on the face of the purchase agreement itself or the transaction document?
We don't dictate where. There's nothing in law that says where it has to be. So we hope for consistency. So if you do it in one place, in one file, that you consistently do it, just so for the purpose of an easy audit trail, right? We expect there to be an audit trail. So the expectation would be that review, that initial and date of that designated broker or managing broker would be in the same place but we don't dictate. Some people do it on their logs. Some people do it in their transaction files. Some people have a cover sheet in their transaction files they do it in, and some of the electronic systems are awesome and have a spot where they can just review and initial who reviewed it. So there's a lot of different ways to get there.
Okay. So just reiterating one of the things you just said, the name of the reviewer must be identified within however that identification is made, right? For the proof of the review must include the name of the reviewer. Is that right?
Right. And a lot of times it's initials, and then we'll ask, who is this? And then if it's not the designated broker, we'll go look for the delegation agreement.
Okay, so this is an example. So the only people under license law who are allowed to review the transactional documents for a broker licensed less than 2 years are the designated broker or a managing broker with the delegation agreement authority to review that file. Is that right?
Yes.
Correct, yes.
Okay. So I'm just a broker licensed to the firm. I've got 30 years of experience. I know as much as any managing broker who's licensed to our firm. I can't review the transaction folder for a broker who's been licensed less than 2 years. Is that fair? Is that,
Yes.
is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Certainly.
I have to have a managing broker's license if I'm going to be reviewing that broker's files.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else on the topic of required office policies?
No, I think we hit all three of them pretty well.
No, I love the intro. It's to your best for your firm to have policies on what happens in your firm so that you have an understanding of who's doing what, when. That comes in handy, especially when you're talking to our staff when one of your clients files a complaint.
Right. Yeah, it's an enormous tool for your protection. So again, if you don't have a good office policy or you haven't had it reviewed lately, make that a priority action. If you have questions on this topic or any other, please ask me a question by visiting warealtor.org. Thank you for being a Washington Realtors member.